going to give Councillor Rowe another couple of minutes to return. She asked if we were coming back at 2, and I kind of suggested that possibly that was the situation, so I feel like I owe it to her. So good afternoon and welcome as we reconvene our council meeting. Thank you for your patience as council was a little bit longer in camera than anticipated. I'd like to start with a territorial acknowledgement. We'd like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather, land on which we are broadcasting from today, is the land traditionally cared for by the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, and Neutral people. We also acknowledge the enduring presence and deep traditional knowledge and philosophies of the Indigenous people with whom we share this land today. At the beginning of this council meeting, we pause to think about the needs of our community. May we show wisdom and compassion in all our decisions. Council, Black History Month has been recognized in Canada since 1978, when advocates from the Ontario Black History Society emphasized the importance of this celebration for Canadians of all races. Almost 50 years of celebration of Black history and Black excellence are still underlined by the struggles that come with the Black experience. Black communities are still underrepresented in workplaces and decision-making structures, more negatively affected in health outcomes, lacking appropriate ongoing investments for entrepreneurs, and more. In communities across Canada and locally, we have also seen that racialized individuals face extreme backlash when they speak out against injustices. We all have a role in creating a city that brings an end to racial discrimination and to build a more inclusive community. This starts with the basics of how we relate to each other as humans. We must be aware of our individual prejudice and learn to treat each other with dignity, respect, and compassion. Learning about the experiences of others is an essential part of understanding how we can effectively join in the fight against all forms of racism and discrimination, including anti-Black racism. Throughout February, we encourage you to support local Black-owned businesses, read the work of Black writers, and connect with your community at one of the many events being hosted by local organizations. As a council, we reaffirm our commitment to addressing anti-Black racism and rededicate ourselves to making the city of Waterloo a place where the contributions of Black community members are recognized and celebrated. This past weekend, I understand that Councillor Roach played an important role on a panel talking about the Black experience, and I wondered if there was any other comments you wanted to share with us, Councillor Roach.
Sure. Thanks, Chair Freeman. It was an honor to be on the panel, moderated by former MPP Laura May Lindo, and thank you, Mayor McCabe and Councillor Vasic for coming out. Thank you, Councillor Rowe, for coming out as well. I think it was a great opportunity to highlight the importance of diversity in leadership, and I think, you know, it can offer unique perspectives that can contribute to a more comprehensive decision-making and better serve the diverse needs of the community. So it was an excellent opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. Council, moving on to disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. Councillor Vasic.
For capital reference 201, contribution to post-secondary facilities to support community access related to my seemingly endless place of study.
Thank you. You'll have to just throw your hand up in the air when we come near that. We have a consent motion. Council, is there anything that anyone would like to remove from the consent agenda? Councillor Bodley?
I'd just like to remove B, just I have a quick question on that.
Okay. Anything else? I guess there is nothing else. So, moving consent motion 6A, all those in favor, moved by Counselor Bassick, seconded by Counselor Hanmer, all those in favor? That's carried unanimously. Counselor Bodley, you had a question?
Yes, thank you. Excuse me, sorry, through you, Chair Freeman. On the declaration of surplus lands for Generation Park, there's sort of a reference to the industrial land account and what we might do to keep that account in good order, and what we might be doing with some funds if there are surplus funds that come to the industrial land account over time. And I'm just curious, particularly given some of the challenges that we're dealing with when it comes to this particular budget, whether or not the potential exists for surplus funds from the ILA to be potentially contemplated in the year 2 and 3 of this budget as property tax reductions.
Through Chair Freeman to Councillor Bodley. The recommendations, some of the reduction opportunities that will be coming to council next Monday. There's maybe one item that's kind of connected to this, I'd suggest. Alternatively, what we would need to do first is it could be a longer period of time until we've fully sold off these lands, fully recouped that investment to the point where the ILA had a surplus funds that could be reallocated. So we can certainly look at that if it times out properly. The one-time opportunities to reallocate the surplus funds kind of helps in a one-time nature, but anything on an ongoing, sustainable type of reduction, we would need to ensure that it is in fact ongoing and sustainable. So, you know, something like if we had additional funds that could increase our interest investment income, that's a potentially an option that we could look at on the property tax base. Otherwise, it's one-time opportunities that staff will be bringing to council, and council will ultimately make that decision on where to allocate those funds. So hopefully that helps, but there will be more coming back on next Monday.
Would you like to move the motion? Moved by Counselor Bodley, seconded by Counselor Rowe. All those in favor? That is unanimous. So, Council, we are now on to staff reports, the 2024 to 2026 routine capital projects. We have a presentation to kind of kick off this portion of the meeting. Welcome, Julie. I just want to say, as you're coming to the podium, just how amazing I think our finance team is, and so I probably won't get enough opportunity to say that over the next 2 weeks, but I thought I'd say that now.
Well, thank you. Good afternoon. Today, Council will review the 2024 to 2026 staff-tabled capital budget and 2027 to 2033 capital forecast. This review will take place by department, and Council will have the opportunity to ask questions of staff on specific projects, potentially make changes to project classifications, and ultimately approve the final project routine, non-routine classifications to be included in the 24 to 2026 capital budget, which Council will consider for adoption on February 12th, or Budget Day. Before Council begins this process, I'd like to provide a brief overview. A total of 326 capital projects are planned across the 10-year capital projection, and 275 of those projects have funding planned in the 24 to 2026 three-year window, for a total of just over $364 million. The 2024 to 2026 staff-tabled capital budget is reflective of the focus on replacement and rehabilitation of the city's infrastructure, with 69% of 2024 to 2026 capital dollars budgeted for infrastructure and transportation systems. The classification of capital projects as routine or non-routine was an efficiency introduced in the 2016 to 2018 capital budget process, and it has since resulted in a reduction in the number of reports for council review, reduced staff time spent on writing reports for approval of routine projects, and allows routine projects related to work, routine project-related work to begin immediately following budget approval. The 2024 to 2026 staff tabled capital budget has 232 projects of the 275 that have been identified as routine. However, these represent only 38% of the 24 to 2026 capital funding. This is reflective of the typically smaller size and standard nature of routine projects. After budget day, these projects would be permitted to commence. 62% of the 2024 to 2026 capital funding is tied to 43 projects that have been identified as non-routine and fall within one of the 3 reporting criteria. Projects with financial materiality greater than $5 million within the 3-year budget window, projects of high public or council interest, and projects specifically requested to be non-routine by council. After budget day, these projects would return to council before commencement to provide council with a project update and to request release of the associated funding. The standard nature of the 2024 to 2026 projects classified as routine is also reflected in the funding source breakdown, with routine projects primarily funded through the city's main tax-based and enterprise reserves and reserve funds, while non-routine projects make wider use of funding from external partners, developers, and debenture financing. When considering the merits of a capital project, it is also important to consider the impact that the project will have on future operating costs. The operating impact of a new facility, for example, would include upkeep and maintenance of the building, furniture and fixtures, additional staffing needs, utility costs, and much more, in order to allow the facility to operate and provide services on a day-to-day basis. These new costs, not yet included in the city's base operating budget, are a future operating pressure and need to be considered in conjunction with the capital cost. As information, the report before council today includes the estimated operating impact of both the routine and non-routine projects planned in 2024 to 2026, and the timing of when those impacts are anticipated to be realized. For today, after council has had the opportunity to review and discuss the projects for each department, staff are seeking council's approval of the routine project classifications for 2024 to 2026. This will be considered department by department as per the listings found in Report Corp 2024-002, Appendices A through E. The full capital program for each department can be found in the capital budget book released on December 11th, 2023, with the Office of the Chief Administrative Officer on pages 31 to 33, the Waterloo Public Library on page 60, Corporate Services Department on pages 41 through 46, Community Services Department on pages 34 to 40, and Integrated Planning and Public Works Department on pages 47 to 59. The associated pages for each department are also listed on today's council agenda for easy reference. After project classifications are approved today, the 2024 to 2026 staff tabled capital budget will then return for council consideration and adoption on February 12th, budget day. In addition today, staff are seeking approval of the Parkland dedication transfer recommendation deferred from December 11th of 2023. This concludes my opening presentation, and pending any questions, I will turn the podium over to Tim Anderson, our CAO, to start us off with the first departmental capital budget presentation for the office of the CAO.
Questions, council? Yep.
Thank you. Through you, Chair Freeman. This is a similar question I'll have for all of the presentations. It's with respect to the projects that are in here that are being classified as routine. I'm curious about if there's, because there's some staff positions that are, new staff positions that are proposed that won't be decided upon until next week. So I'm curious about how, like, if projects that are in here that are deemed routine, what the impact of the staff position, whether it's approved or not approved, would have on those, and if that changes the nature of those projects. So I don't know if that's something that you want to respond to, Tim, or,
Maybe I can jump in. I was going to provide a few overview comments kind of around that piece. Is that
Okay,
okay?
sure.
So council, just so that we're clear, the goal for today will be to work through the appendices that are here. The mayor and I tried to give a heads up to the commissioners and some of their team members to let them know that if there's a project that's listed as routine, that is somewhat tied to a staff position, meaning that there's that if when we go through the staff requirements next week as part of our operating budget, we're just trying to get a sense of whether or not is a staff position entirely required for one of these pieces to advance, and if it is, then perhaps that can be flagged and we can make it non-routine for now. In terms of process, after we make decisions around the staffing piece next week, we could possibly work with staff to have another presentation where we could reconsider those from routine to non-routine or vice versa subsequent to those staff decisions. So the thoughts were, if there's a big hitting item in here that is listed as routine but probably wouldn't advance if we didn't advance a staff position, that we can move it to non-routine today. And then after our staffing decisions, we can reconsider that after the fact. Does that make sense? Is there questions around that piece? So again, it's really kind of to focus in on some of those larger projects that might currently be listed as routine. If there's no staff person to drive those forward, maybe we should make them non-routine for now. And then staff can also give consideration to how they may advance that work with or without the additional staff member. Is that good? Yep. Yep, Brad? Sorry, I didn't see your hand.
That's okay. Thank you, Chair Freeman. So to you and to the mayor. So thank you for that. So staff have reviewed the capital project listing, and we have pre-identified projects that are directly connected with staffing budget requests, which will be considered for approval on February 12th. So to help guide this conversation today, those have been flagged for council's consideration. So they are still classified as routine, but we have a flag on the approval file noting that they do have an associated position tied to them. So there's 8 projects that we have flagged for council's consideration. And then following approval of the classifications today, and then ultimately if those positions are approved next Monday, staff would then return back post-budget approval to potentially have those reclassified as routine. In addition to those 8 projects, there are 2 projects that also have staffing implications, but they're already identified as non-routine in nature based on those projects. So we've also identified those that they are tied to staffing, but there would be no action required today of council as they're already non-routine in nature. So when we get to the individual divisions, those are pre-identified for council to make those changes.
That's excellent. As always, staff are nimble with their response to our questions. So thank you very much for that. I appreciate it. So council, as we work our way through the agenda today, I'm going to go one piece at a time so that we can, did you have a question about the process? Okay, so we'll go through each number in your agenda one by one, and although it will, at one point I was thinking of blocking these per department, but I'm not gonna do that today. It's gonna be a lot better direction for us to go one at a time. So I think if I'm correct, Mr. Anderson, we have 2 pieces to manage before your presentation. So one is that council consider approving the report corporate 2024-02. So how about we just do that, because the next piece around Northfield, I believe that Councillor Rowe has some questions. So can we move item 1? So moved by Councillor Roach, seconded by Councillor Bodley. All those in favor? So that's carried unanimously. And now we're on to item 2, which is the council approve 4.405 million be transferred from the Northdale portion of the general portion of the Parkland Dedication Reserve Fund. So Councillor Rowe, you had questions on that one?
Thank you, through you, Chair. Yes, I do have some questions for staff. I requested the deferral so that we could have an open conversation and just understand the history of the Pub Northdale Fund and the implications of the transfer to Pub General. So I'm just wondering if we can start with just explaining the history of the Pub Northdale Fund and how it came to be right now separate from the Pub General.
Through you, Chair Freeman, to Councillor Rowe, thank you for the question. So I'll keep it a little higher level than the information that was shared. But the Northdale program was initially created to track collections within the Northdale area separately from the Pub General program, which would be for all the other locations across the city. And that was done to ensure that we had sufficient funding allocated to acquire and develop the necessary parkland within the Northdale area. So in 2018, we had done a comprehensive zoning bylaw review and official plan amendment that allowed us to reallocate some funds from the Northdale program to the general program at that time. And so now staff are recommending an additional transfer of 4.4 million of surplus funding from Northdale to Gen, as the Northdale area has seen an investment of over $8 million, and then an additional 3.6 million, which is allocated to the future Northdale Parks project, reference 623. And so from staff's perspective, sufficient funding is available to complete the needs in Northdale. And then we'll just note that nothing would be precluding this council or future councils from using Pub General funds in the future to make investments in Northdale or any area of the city. So hopefully that answers that one.
Thank you. So with the transfer into Pub General then, how does that impact the citywide projects? Like what are some of the examples that would be influenced by the transfer?
Through you, Chair Freeman, to Councillor Rowe. So I guess the first thing I'll note is that the remaining 3.6 million allocated to reference 623 will be to complete any outstanding needs in the Northdale area. But the transfer of 4.4 million would go to support various projects that are funded by Pub General. So to name a few, reference 281 Bridgeport and Margaret Park, reference 303 St. Moritz Community Park, reference 326 Indigenous Gathering Space, and reference 330 Sportsland acquisition. This is an example. There's various ways we could look at this, but in essence, there's 4.4 million more of Pub Gen that would be allocated through this transfer.
So then this would be, I think, the next obvious question for me anyway. Then what are the risks if the transfer doesn't happen at this time?
Yes, to you, Councillor Rowe. So at this point in time, the 2024 to 2026 staff tabled budget does include the 4.4 million transfer and allocation to Pub General projects. So if council was to not approve recommendation 2 at this time, or deferred that further, staff would need to make some adjustments to the 2024 to 2026 capital budget, in essence removing 4.4 million worth of pub funded projects.
Thank you. So some of the projects for Northdale that we would be looking at, I'm just wondering if we could have a couple examples of that. And then a bit more specifically, I'm interested in the Community Hub project and a little bit of, maybe a bit of background on that and sort of where that stands now with the transfer and what we would be looking at in the future in terms of funding that project.
Through the chair to Councillor Rowe. So for the Northdale parks, there's 2 parks that are currently in probably about 90% stage of completion. So they should be finished up in 2024.
And are there any projects that we can discuss then that are all the funds remaining in Northdale going to those two parks, or there's additional projects?
Yeah, so so to you, Councillor Rowe, reference 623, which I think we can talk about in terms of classification after. There's 3.6 million over the 3 years, which is for additional projects, I think, in a lot of degree to be determined of what those needs are. And in regards to the Waterloo Collegiate Institute Community Hub project, so staff are aware of that project and have been part of those conversations. And we're really looking for that to be advanced through the province and the school boards in terms of that funding. And so if there is a point in time where the community hub model does move forward, the city would be interested in looking to potentially provide some funding support for that project. And that wouldn't be precluding us from funding that from PubGen at the time or any other funding source that would be appropriate. But that's really a longer term item that is subject to other areas advancing it.
Thank you, that answers my questions.
So with those questions answered, are you prepared to move the motion as written? Okay.
Yes, I am.
Okay, so it's moved by Councillor Rowe, seconded by Councillor Wright. Any further questions on this, council? Seeing none, all in favor? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. And now we're back to Mr. Anderson. And so this, within your capital budget book, you'll find all of these on pages 31 to 33. And it's also in the council agenda as Appendix A. So it's all yours, Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Chair Freeman, Mayor, and members of council. I will start with a little bit of context setting to kind of build off of Julie's presentation. As Julie noted, there are 326 capital projects in our 10-year forecast, representing $920 million worth of work. So a significant part of our work and a long history of delivering capital projects for the City of Waterloo. But how do they become to be? And a little bit of background on that, or what follows in the next few slides. So our projects are scoped, and we often use historic tenders and actual construction projects to use to update our unit rates and estimate what that forecast looks like over the next 10 years. It's not always 100% accurate, but it's a very, very good guide for us. So we use those unit rates, keep it very updated as we go, and use that as a portion of the estimating tools for the individual projects. There are change management tools that are incorporated into our project management approach here at the city, and that includes things like project charters, part of our project management approach, as well as budget contingencies within the specific line items. And we have a great, I think, historic track record of delivering capital projects within budget. Some examples include the East Side Branch Library, the Waterloo Memorial Rec Complex renovations and the Pavilion project, the Generation Park site servicing work, Longfellow Drive, and those are just to name a few. Is it always on budget? Not always. There are some surprises, but there are tools within our financial policies to allow adjustments for unforeseen circumstances. We use a high degree of rigor when approaching the capital projects, and it's rooted in our purchasing bylaw. The bylaw was last updated in 2019, and as we go forward, will be updated again. But it's really the core of it. The intention of the purchasing bylaw, of course, is to ensure city purchases are made reflecting the best value for the city and protecting the city's financial interests and encouraging competitive bidding. And so that's a real core fundamental for many, many of the projects that we do. The third bullet there says the city processes distinguish between professional services, and we have different procurement approaches essentially for consulting expertise versus construction tenders. So often you see those consultant procurements through an RFP process and a construction project through a normal tender process. And then we do use quite regularly the early tender approach. Council approved a number of capital projects in December to allow us to have a head start on tendering. as well as multi-year tenders. And some examples of those multi-year tenders, including our asphalt and concrete repairs, which occur citywide. In our buildings, the elevator maintenance agreement, our trenchless technology approach to sewer replacement. In total, there's about currently 13 active multi-year tenders in place. And then the last slide here, again, just a few bullets. We have a good relationship around the area municipalities using best management practice teams for transportation, utilities, the facilities group starting up a collaboration group through best management practices. Again, looking to learn from those around us and partner where we can. We continue to explore those initiatives, and it has led to great design work. I think an example of some of that thinking is demonstrated in the Eastside Branch Library, some of the innovative new award-winning materials that went in place there. The Larch Street reconstruction, the Wooner, kind of one of the first designs of that nature in Canada. And then the third bullet speaks to our corporate approach around project management. As new people come in, there has been improved rigor in our project management training across the corporation, and some really good work led by IPPW that helps benefit all of the corporation in that regard. And the last one is, again, partnering with the region and the local municipalities when we can on joint initiatives with City of Kitchener or on any regional project, essentially. We're generally partnering with the region to help upgrade our utilities that run under those regional roads at the same time. So yeah, that's a little bit of context setting of how the whole program goes. And now I will dive directly into the CAO's area over the next few slides. Over the next, the 10-year horizon in the forecast, there's $37.9 million in funding for the three divisions, economic development, the READY team, and strategic initiatives. And the 3-year horizon has $20.4 million of that. If council dived into the capital budget line items for our area, you'll see that the front end funding is quite large in our team, primarily because of the balance of Generation Park site servicing and the east side employment lands. It's got a placeholder in for site servicing. And then this slide shows the difference between our investments in growth versus rehabilitation. As council knows, we have about $4 billion in assets across the city, and so rehabilitation has been a real focus for council. In our particular team, we are dominated by the growth aspect, again, related to those two primary projects, Generation Park and the East Side lands. And then just a quick illustration of capital investment by our strategic priorities. In alignment with my past comments here, you'll see the the innovation and future ready strategic pillar being the dominant one over the 3-year forecast. And that continues on the right side of the screen over the 10 years as well. And as Julie noted, we will now dive directly into the routine and non-routine areas of the CAO's budget. So over the next 3 years, there's $7.6 million allocated currently as routine. Non-routine is 12.7, so for a total of 20.4 million over the 3-year forecast, and then the balances you see for the balance of the 10-year forecast. I know finance is prepared now to put up on the screen our individual project sheets, and we'll open it up to you, Chair Freeman, to help lead the discussion on routine and non-routine. But to Mayor McCabe's question, any projects specifically related to staffing in our capital program, I believe Julie and Brad will highlight this one, but project reference 132 in the CAO's area, which is equity and reconciliation partnerships, that is tied to a position. It's a small component of it, but we wanted to highlight that for council. So that concludes our portion of the presentation, Chair Freeman, and I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you. So council, we're going to deal with each recommendation first. So the first one is that council approve that the economic development projects listed in Appendix A be classified as routine, and that these projects be considered for budget adoption on February 12th of '24. So those items are on your screen right now, and they compose of items, capital budget sheets number 102 through to 125. Now, within that, is there any routine projects listed there that council would like changed to non-routine? Seeing none, is there someone willing to move that motion? Moved by Councillor Vasek, seconded by Councillor Rowe. All those in favor? Okay, that's carried unanimously, so that takes care of item 3. Item 4 is that council approve that the reconciliation, equity, accessibility, diversity, and inclusion projects listed in Appendix A be classified as routine, and that they be considered for budget adoption. So those are there. You can see that item 132 is tied to a staffing request. I'm looking to see whether council would like to alter item 132, or if you're comfortable with that. Yeah, Councillor Boddy?
Sorry, I was just gonna ask a question, maybe this might be helpful going forward as well too, for my knowledge as we turn our eye to next week as well too. Are we able to highlight what that staffing request is? Like what's the B or S or I item that it's being referred to as we're going through here, just so that we can make the connection?
Yep, through you, Chair Freeman, that one is linked directly to B23, which is the READY project coordinator role. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Did anyone want to change the routine nature of this? Councillor Hanmer?
Thank you. I'm wondering, it's a broader question. If we are wanting to take a look at any of the staffing ones, and we've identified in the opening remarks that there were 8, my suggestion would be that we, all of those that have routine now with staffing attached to it, we put them all as non-routine, and we're bringing them back next week.
Okay, I'm indifferent with that course of action. If council would like to do that, my preference would still be to do it at each phase as we come across them, because it's just easier, because we can ask a question like Councillor Bodley did in terms of,
Keeping
you know,
track.
which position are we, you know, so that we have it in our mind's eye when we come back to it next week. So would you like to just move that one to be non-routine?
I'd like to hear from the clerk first.
Okay.
Thank you. Through the chair to council, what would be helpful if, and that is fine as a general philosophy, the desire would be to shift all of them, but as we go through for each recommendation, it would simply be tacked on to the end of it as amended to convert, reference 132 to non-routine. And then, as Chair Freeman mentioned, there would be a report even following budget day if at that point it was identified that some of those could convert back to routine.
Right. Yeah, I'm quite happy through you, Chair, to make sure that we've got the conversation we need to have. So however we need to orchestrate it, if I need to move to make it non-routine, I'm happy to do that, or if the clerk's happy to carry those through.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. So why don't we do this? Can you please make item 132 non-routine? And then I'll suggest to council, is there someone willing to move a motion that says council approve this as amended? So item 4 as amended. And then, again, remember what happens with non-routine, it's not that we're not approving it. It's just that after we have our conversation next week around staffing, staff can bring back another report based on our decisions next week to say, council, would you consider now making this a routine project? And then they don't have to prepare a staff report for us to approve. So essentially, again, what happens when we make something non-routine is that before they spend the money, they would bring a report to us to say we'd like to spend the money. So it's in the budget, but we can make a decision whether or not to spend the money down the road. So ultimately, the goal would be not to generate a whole bunch of new staff reports. It's just also for us to better understand when we're making decisions next week around staffing, what that's tied to on the capital side. Yep.
So next week, if we made this non-routine this week, we may make it routine next week?
My suggestion is we do it after we do the budget, so it's in the capital budget. And then we let staff bring back another report after we've made all of our staffing decisions. We're just gonna honestly run out of time next week, trying to come back to the capital side.
Yeah.
So I'd rather just tag it as non-routine and allow staff to come back to us after budget day, if that's okay.
What if I disagree with that
Oh,
idea?
you
Yeah?
can vote against. Yeah, like,
Can I say why, though, just so we can?
sure, yeah, of course.
Yeah, should we have a seconder to?
Yep, yeah, so you were okay to move the motion as amended, and is there a seconder for that motion? Seconded by Mayor McCabe, so by all means, Councillor Bassick.
I'm happy to make some of the routine, non-routine. The only the reason why this one strikes me as sort of not wanting to do that is because it's a very low amount of money and we're very under capacity in that particular staff team. And so I don't think that they need to spend any time writing a report asking for funds for this. And it's a base budget staffing request, so we're not even gonna, well, we might debate the staff person, but it's in the base budget, so it's not like a menu item situation. So I think this should still stay as routine, whereas maybe the 7 others should go non-routine.
Yeah, and that's fine. Is it okay? Can we just, can I just call the motion and then we'll see where it goes? And if we need to put a different motion on the table, we will. I think we can be fairly congenial about this. And I certainly hear what you're saying.
Just a quick comment to that. My understanding of this is that if we, like, whether or not, if the staff positions get approved, and then it comes back to council, they're not needing to write a report about it. Like, that's part of, would be part of this process too.
Yeah, the goal would be that after we make staffing decisions, we'll receive a report as council that'll simply say, can you reconsider 132 to make it routine now that you've made a decision on staffing? And then they don't have to write reports.
Yeah.
That's where we're headed. This
the need
doesn't
to write that
automatically
report.
trigger reports to be written.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, and it
we're
wouldn't,
gonna-
and it would save that month to 6 weeks time lapse as well.
We all want to preempt staff reports. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair Freeman. If I can add some clarity, that would be a finance report. And so say if at the end of the day, you've decided 7 capital projects have gone from routine to non-routine, just give staff a little bit more time to look at any decisions that are made on budget day around staffing and whether or not there's maybe opportunities to use staff differently to still accomplish the project and then come back. So it wouldn't be that each individual division is now writing a report. That's only for those that stay non-routine at the end of the day. But there would be one sort of over-encompassing, from finance report where you could then consider it.
Is that helpful? Yeah. Yeah, because this, because we were trying to noodle through this morning, we probably weren't as clear on where we're headed. So we have a motion on the table as amended, and all those in favor? So that's carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 5 is related to strategic initiatives, and those are listed here as items 141 through to 148. And so did anyone want to change any of these from routine to non-routine? Okay, can I look for a mover?
Sorry, just a point of clarification. Is this an opportunity for us to ask questions about?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
Okay, perfect.
As a reminder, the project sheets are in the supplemental materials, so if you can identify which number you had a question on, that'd be great.
Thank you, through you, Chair Freeman. So I have a question about items 142 through 145. These are all sort of climate-related questions, and I was just hoping that staff might be able to highlight for council and perhaps the community that might be listening, the types of initiatives that we might see through these capital projects.
Sandy was so waiting for the first question.
Through you, Chair Freeman, to Councillor Bodley. So just for clarification, you're referring to items 142, 143, and 144. Is that right? 145 is with regards to the EV vehicle charging program. Did you want an example?
No,
for
that's
that one
fine.
as well?
I
Okay,
I can probably assume what the EV charging program
Okay.
entails.
perfect. Okay, so those three items are to implement the actions in all three of those plans. Transform Waterloo Region, the Corporate Climate Action Plan, which Council approved last week, as well as the Corporate Climate Change Adaptation Plan. So as I've mentioned before, we are in the implementation phase for our actions. So some examples of some of the actions that you can anticipate that we would be using the project funding for include, for Transform, one of the actions, Action 3.2.4, refers to energy planning considerations and incorporating those as part of the development approval process. So once changes are made at the provincial level in terms of allowing us to require certain things as part of the planning approval process, we can certainly work with our staff in IPPW to help bring that forward, whether that's incorporating requirements, whether that's hiring third party. So we would look to be providing some of that funding to assist them to be able to do that. Another example is Action 6.1.2 in Transform, which speaks to funding a climate justice committee across the region. We have started to do that internally already in terms of building the foundation for that work, but the work has not yet commenced on a region-wide basis. So some of that funding could be used to help create that team. In terms of core cap, there's a couple actions that we would be looking to do. Action 2 speaks to the implementation of the green building policy. And so although we won't have sufficient funding to make the transformational projects happen in facilities that need to happen, we can provide some seed funding for some of the studies that would need to be done. So we could work closely with Kevin Van Oudegem and his team to bring that work forward. Another example is action number 6, and that refers to public engagement. And so raising awareness with the public, some of the funding through Core Cap could be used for that action. And finally, in terms of the Corporate Climate Change Adaptation Plan, there's a couple different actions. Action 5.1 refers to the development of the urban forest management strategy, which is already underway under the direction of Robin Milne. But some of the money could help, or some of the funding could be used to help create that canopy tree target, as well as looking at heat island mapping. That's something that Robin and I have discussed in the past. So some of that funding could go towards that project, recognizing that his team may not have sufficient funding to take on a few extra things. He would be looking to our team to help fund that work. And again, another example could be Action 4.4, which is, as part of the Corporate Climate Change Adaptation Plan, aims to incorporate climate change considerations into the city's approach to asset management and provide training to staff. That action is already underway, but we would be looking at strengthening that connection with the asset management team as part of our adaptation work and looking at opportunities of how to strengthen that connection so that adaptation can be better integrated as part of asset management moving forward.
That's great, thank you. And just a follow-up, if I may, Councilor Freeman, Chair Freeman. I guess the thing that's just sort of striking to me is when you look at 144, the Climate Change Adaptation Plan implementation, it just ends after this year, and I assume that that is not us saying that after this year, the city of Waterloo will be fully adapted to climate change. So I wonder if you could maybe speak to how you envision our adaptation needs moving forward, and maybe assure me that there are funds for us to continue to adapt to some of the changing climate issues that we're going to be facing as a municipality.
Sure. Through you, Chair Freeman, to Councillor Bodley. Really good question, because obviously our focus has been on mitigation to date. So there's a few reasons why it looks like there's no further adaptation funding being included. One being that based on existing resources and strategic initiatives, we're just starting to kind of refocus our energies on adaptation. We currently have some project funding, and then obviously there's an increase in funding being requested as part of the capital budget. So we really want to take a deep dive later this year in terms of looking at the status of those 37 actions in the Corporate Climate Change Adaptation Plan. A number of those actions are already underway, but we also recognize there's some gaps missing. So with our update report that we'll be bringing forward in the fall, we'll be looking at those 37 actions, recognizing that some of those are already underway and they've already been funded as part of each division's work. We'll be looking at the ones that haven't yet been funded or are not underway. What are the barriers, whether or not some of the project funding can be used for that? And then moving forward, whether there's new actions, whether we'll be introducing additional actions as part of the plan. In terms of future funding, we'll be working closely with Brad Witzel and his team in terms of future budget processes, in terms of what does the next iteration of the Corporate Climate Change Adaptation Plan look like. I wish I could tell you that we'll be fully adapted this year, but that's not the case. It's just based on capacity and resources right now and strategic initiatives, just trying to look at in terms of prioritizing actions. But we'll be working closely with the finance team as part of the next budget process to determine what does it look like in terms of funding for adaptation, in terms of mitigation. Are they integrating? Because right now we've kept them not separate, but as their own kind of projects, but we're seeing a real push happening in the space to really integrate climate change adaptation and mitigation. So what does that look like in terms of the future of our work? Will it be separated? Will they be more integrated? So there's a few unknowns right now, but I can assure you that the work will continue to move forward when it comes to adaptation.
Thank you for that. Any other questions for Sandy? Councillor Wright?
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Sandy, I'm just hoping you can maybe help us better understand reference number 146, which is the grant opportunities, and how that might be linked to some of those other initiatives you were just speaking of.
Sure, through you, Chair Freeman, to Councillor Wright, I can maybe start it off, and if I miss anything, then I'll look to our finance staff to kind of fill in some of the gaps. So yes, so that particular project since 2019 has been set up to provide matching funds to support grant applications across the city. It sits with strategic initiatives because the division itself, although being brand new, is really well positioned in terms of this funding because we kind of have that corporate-wide view. So some examples that we've used this funding for in terms of matching funds, as you are well aware, many grant applications require us to provide a certain amount of funds to kind of match, and this particular project has been set up for that purpose. So some examples include the Green and Inclusive Buildings Fund, which was used for AMCC, and the Canada Community Revitalization Fund, which was used for the Uptown Washroom. And so again, it's with strategic initiatives in terms of because of the corporate-wide impact of this particular project, it makes sense to kind of, for it to be sitting within strategic initiatives.
Great. Awesome. Thank you. With that information, Council, is someone prepared to move item 5? Yeah. Go ahead, Mayor.
But is there not, I forget which one, there's a staff position attached to one of these, is there not? Like
Mr. Anderson
or is
saying
that-
no?
Not in this particular
Not in this
section,
one?
Mayor. That
Oh.
was the previous one. Yep.
Oh, okay, thank you.
So with that being said, is someone willing to move that? Moved by Councillor Bodley, seconded by Councillor Wright. All those in favor? Councillor Roach, you good? Yep, that's all in favor. Thank you, that's carried. So now we're on to the Waterloo Public Library. Welcome, Kelly. Did you have a presentation? Yep, okay, great.
Good afternoon, Chair Freeman, Mayor McCabe, and Council. It's my pleasure to be here with you today. So the capital projects are well aligned between the City of Waterloo and Waterloo Public Library in terms of strategic priorities. The projects we have planned sustain and continue to develop a great library system for the city now and into the future. Planned projects align with the goals of complete community with a total request of one $1,160,000, and with infrastructure and transportation systems with $780,000 in associated funds. The total for these over 10 years is $2,415,000 related to complete community and $2,630,000 related to infrastructure and transportation systems. The total capital requests over 10 years are $6.2 million for Waterloo Public Library, with $1.9 million of this for planned projects happening in the next 3 years. Of our planned projects, 46% are related to growth and 45% to rehabilitation. For WPL, funds allocated for growth support areas like our collection, and rehabilitation funds support things like our technology infrastructure. The plans to refresh our customer areas at Main will align with that category. 9% of the request is categorized as other. And in terms of strategic priorities for the City of Waterloo, you'll notice that our planned projects are significantly aligned with complete community pillar. 60% of planned projects are coming from us that support that area in the immediate 3-year budget period. And that's almost exactly the same for the 10-year horizon. So all of the projects planned for Waterloo Public Library for the next 3 years are classified as routine, with a total of $1,940,000. There are no non-routine projects planned for this period. And to Mayor McCabe's question, there are no positions that are connected to any of these projects. That concludes my
Great.
presentation.
Any questions, council, for the library? Seeing none, there's a motion here that we approve library projects listed in Appendix B as routine. Did you want to bring that up, Brad, the sheet first? Yeah. Sorry, did I see a hand for a question, or was that moving the motion? Okay, moved by Councillor Wright, seconded by Councillor Rowe. All those in favor? And that's carried unanimously. Thank you so much, Kelly.
Thank you.
Corporate services.
Good afternoon, Council, members of the public and staff. As you can see, Corporate Services has $28 million of capital investments proposed for the first 3 years of the budget, and an additional $47 million forecasted for the remaining 7 years, for a full year, 10-year total, rather, of $75 million. Of the $28 million, the first 3 years, 40%, or $10.9 million, is for routine projects, and there are 29 of them within 6 divisions. And highlights include, from communications, digital strategy implementation; for finance, community benefits charge, density bonusing funding, to be used for a variety of activities, including affordable housing; maintenance of our asset management decision support system; and PeopleSoft upgrades and enhancements. For fleet and procurement, we have the fleet equipment growth and fleet green strategy implementation. And for HR, we have compensation reviews and continuing to train staff on public engagement. For IMTS, we have computer and cell phone refresh, along with a variety of other IMTS projects intended to continue to maintain our IT infrastructure. And some funding for legislated services at the start of a new council term to update council's equipment and minor adjustments to chambers. So looking at the full $75 million proposed investment of corporate services projects over the 10 years, our department's capital program is mostly focused on rehabilitation. And the largest projects within this category are the fleet equipment replacement, computer cell phone refresh, and cybersecurity. We also have investments in growth, which is the red item on the chart. And this is the implementation of the community benefits charge funding, which is of course growth related as it is on account of development. And the other, and split in blue and purple, is mainly for the PeopleSoft upgrades and enhancements and digital strategy implementation. So given that the department's 10-year capital program is largely rehabilitation-focused, it's logical that our strategic priority that we most closely align with is infrastructure, the dark red color, at about 76 to 79%. And the projects making up the majority of this investment are largely the fleet and equipment project and the garage asset replacement and refurbishment, as well as 17 IMTS projects, with the largest being the computer cell phone refresh and cybersecurity. Complete community investments, 10 to 13%, is largely the community benefit charge related projects. Innovation and future ready, and that's the 8% and sort of that teal color, is the digital strategy implementation and PeopleSoft upgrades and enhancements. Environmental in green is the fleet green strategy and implementation project, and the reconciliation, equity, accessibility, diversity, and inclusion in purple is HR's compensation reviews, employee engagement surveys, and the public engagement for training for staff that I mentioned before. And so today we are seeking approval of the routine classification of the 29 corporate services projects from 6 divisions with a value of $10.9 million within the first 3 years of the budget. I touched on these projects earlier in the presentation, and of course they are in Appendix C of the staff report. So thank you for your time, and happy to take any questions you may have.
Questions for the Commissioner? Julie?
Thank you. Through you, Chair. So I'm just curious about item number 410, which is the community benefits charge. And on that sheet, it does indicate that this is associated with some legacy funding. So just wanted a little more detail on that. Maybe you could share.
Sure, through you, Chair Freeman, to Councillor Wright, and Brad will jump in and assist me if needed, or Michael. But these are legacy density bonusing funds that had been previously allowed through legislation in advance of the CBC coming to life a couple of years ago. And so these funds have been budgeted for as a result of those agreements that have occurred over the years with developers and set aside for specific uses. And so a portion of those uses have been determined to be for affordable housing, as an example, but there are others, including the building of multi-use trails and other things. So these are those funds that have been previously committed to through those density bonusing agreements with developers that are now still being budgeted for in the future.
So let's start with item 7. So I think based on our previous discussion, we'll move this to non-routine. So is there someone willing to move this motion as amended?
Sorry, can
Yep.
I'm hoping that staff can highlight for us what these, what the B or S or whatever items are as we're going through here, if that's possible for each of the 8.
Absolutely.
So that as we prepare for next week, I have some context there.
So through you, Chair Freeman, to Councillor Bodley and Council. So for this first item, the staff budget request associated with this would be S6, hold on, S6 and S7. So the digital services specialist is S6, and S7 is the web developer within IMTS. And if I may also, menu item number 2, which is the second digital services specialist.
Thank you. So my suggestion would be we make this non-routine and we amend this motion so council approve the communications process listed in Appendix C be classified as non-routine and that this project be considered for budget on November 12th. Is there someone willing to move that? Moved by Councillor Wright, seconded by Councillor Rowe. All those in favor? That's carried unanimously. Julie, there was only one piece there, so it just made sense. And so is it the same, is this the same numbers, Philippa, or is this a which number, staff number is this one?
This is a different number, Councillor Freeman. This is I-4.
I-
It is the GIS Specialist Analyst.
Great, thank you. Great. With that change, was there any other changes of these projects to non-routine that anyone would like to make? Seeing none, is someone willing to move this amended recommendation? Moved by Councillor Vassic, seconded by Councillor Bodley. All those in favor? That's carried unanimously, thank you. So, item 9 is with regard to fleet procurement services. And it's weird, I thought there was a staff position associated with fleet procurement.
Through you, Chair Freeman, there's a contract manager position, but it is not tied specifically to a capital project.
Okay, okay, thank you, I appreciate that. So, did anyone want to change any of these to non-routine? Okay, seeing none, is there a mover for item 9? Moved by Councillor Bodley, seconded by Councillor Hanmer. All those in favor? That's carried unanimously. Item 10 is with regard to human resources projects listed in Appendix C. Any changes, council? Seeing none, do I have a mover? Moved by Councillor Rowe, seconded by Councillor Vassic. All those in favor? It's carried unanimously. Item 11 is with regard to information management and technology services. Any changes to this menu list, council? Seeing none, moved by Mayor McCabe, seconded by Councillor Vassic. All those in favor? That's carried unanimously. Item 12, legislative services. Any changes? Seeing none, do I have a mover? Moved by Councillor Rowe, seconded by Councillor Hanmer. All those in favor? It's carried unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Dykstra?
All right, thank you, Council. Good afternoon. Community Services is pleased to present our capital budget overview for this budget cycle. We are excited for the outcomes that could be achieved as a result of implementing the capital projects that we have tabled. We see great outcomes around placemaking, both indoors and outdoors, built form improvements to advance accessibility and inclusion, strong response to the climate emergency, increases in public safety, and strong forward-looking planning to be future ready. Our capital initiatives are well linked to our strategic plan. Within consideration and with consideration for this cycle, over the 10 years, the capital investment plan is $184 million for community services. The various divisions are noting there, wanting to highlight those: community program and outreach services, facility design and management services, our fire rescue team, municipal enforcement, parks, forestry and cemetery services, and recreation. And within this budget cycle, we have expenditures planned at $88.4 million. Significant investment for the Community Services Department are related over the 10 years to rehabilitation, as you can see, at 47%, growth related at 30%, and a mix of the two at 14%. Also included is 9% for others related to health and safety and our strategic initiatives and the planning work that the department does. This slide breaks down our linkages to the strategic plan. As you would expect, significant strat plan linkages are related to complete community at 49% over the 3-year period and 40% over the 10-year period. This is followed by infrastructure and transportation at 32% and 43% respectively, followed by then environmental sustainability and climate action at 15 and 12. For this cycle, Community Services is seeking approval of $29.4 million as routine projects, and with an additional 58.9 is requested to be approved as non-routine for the 2024 to 2023 period. As we wrap up, this slide illustrates past examples of our significant investment to support our community. We look forward to doing similar with the proposed capital projects that we have outlined in the budget now. I'll conclude with just a link to those items that staff see related to the transition from routine to non-routine, and those will come up, but just as a precursor, 288 is the AV technician, B26. We have 2 items related to our parks manager, B27 being 308 and 309, related to emerald ash borer and urban forest implementation. And then related to items S3 and S4 QP seasonal conversions, those relate to that item being the winter equipment 327. So we'll highlight those again, but just starting as a precursor on that discussion. So I'll take any questions. The directors are here as well and can follow up accordingly.
Thank you very much. Questions? Councillor Basak?
I have specific reference numbers. Do you want to wait till this is up, or can I just ask them now?
If it's in this first bunch, it probably makes sense to ask it now.
I'll wait, yeah, then,
Yeah.
okay.
So the first group is 201 to, it's community programming and outreach projects listed in Appendix D. And
This is my pecuniary interest, sorry.
This is the one?
Yes,
Okay.
201.
201, okay, then please go ahead. Okay, so with Councillor Basak recused, we're on these first set for community programming and outreach projects. And is there any changes that people wanted to make here? I'm just confused why we have parks, forestry, and cemetery mixed in. I was thinking we were doing these, I just want to make it clear that, so it looks like it's just 203, 204, 205, 206, 213, is that correct? Because 201 is non-routine, so the routine projects are there. Any changes, council? Yep, Brad?
Yes, just to be clear, on each of the slides that come up, it's only the projects that are highlighted in yellow that are part of the routine classifications within the 3-year window.
Yeah, it's just, I thought we were just doing community programming and outreach, and I see like we've kind of intermixed facility design, parks, forestry, and cemetery, but if
Sorry,
everybody
Councillor,
else has
yeah.
got it, that's fine.
Sorry, if I can just add, so the project listing is summarized by the service delivery division, so all of CPO, but in a few cases, the project is implemented by another area, so in this case, Parks would implement on their behalf, so that's why there may be some confusion on this view, because we've hidden that other column.
Okay, thank you, that helps me. So seeing no changes here, council, is there a mover?
So, sorry, just for a clarification, are we just moving 201 while Councillor Basak's not here?
No, because it's a non-routine, so.
So then should Councillor Basak be here?
Go
For the
ahead.
rest of them, though?
Through the chair to Councillor Bodley, it's really a conversation about which of these do you want to be routine? So, I mean, someone could theoretically suggest 201 should be routine, which is why she's not here.
Correct. All the power's in your hand. Seeing no changes, oh, sorry.
Thank you through you. It's not a change. It's a question. Yeah, and it's about 2:01. I recall from last term of council that the request had come from University of Waterloo for a particular amount of money to be earmarked for a project, an expansion that they're doing. And if I'm recalling correctly, it was about all of this amount. So I'm just curious how we're going to balance both Laurier and UW's requests, because they both are pretty significant.
Through the chair to Councillor Hamner, this request is 2004, so it's just related to UFW. We have the funding for WLU in 2023.
Okay, I was confused as I was reading the sheet. Thank you.
Thank you for that question. Councillor Wright?
Thanks, through you, Chair. Can I just clarify that the majority of items 203, 204, 205, 206 are fees for consultants?
Through the chair to councillor, just noting the neighborhood strategy, those are really the move forward pieces within the plan. So that's implementation, so that's not consulting work, but yes, the sports field upgrade. And it's a mix of both as we look at staff resources perhaps, as well as consultant resources for all of that. We have some emerging staff that may be able to take the role as well, additional back support as they take a lead on these, so a good opportunity for growth too, but leveraging consultants as well.
Okay, and the last item would be 213 is also likely a consulting fee? That's the museum.
I foresee that as well on the museum strategy. There's, again, the same type of approach where we can leverage staff resources and backfill perhaps, and then consultants as well on that one.
Okay, thank you.
Do I have a mover for item 13? Moved by Councillor Wright, seconded by Councillor Hanmer. All those in favor? So that is carried. Should we give Councillor Vassic a chance to return? Welcome back. Item 228, can you remind us again, Mr. Dykstra, which number, which is the staffing piece tied to that one?
Yeah, through you to council, it is B26, the AV technician.
Okay, so we'll make that one non-routine, please. Is there any other project council would like to make non-routine in, or vice versa in this section? Okay, seeing none. May I have a mover for an amended, what? Sure.
I just wanted to highlight on item 226, and this is really just a comment for me of seeing how the capital budget builds on itself over time. And I only note that in the 2020 to 2022 capital budget, we had about $4.2 million over the 10-year capital project, 10-year capital forecast for this green building policy implementation. And I think it is a credit to staff and to council that we've been pushing on making our facilities more green, and it's really great to see that the funding is following the direction from council to highlight that. So I just wanted to give kudos to staff on seeing that funding increase over time.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think I'd like to further say that, that doing that work was something we've heard loud and clear from the community. So we're not pulling that particular one out of a hat. So with that being said, is there someone who's willing to move item 14 as amended? Councillor Hanmer, seconded by Councillor Bodley. All those in favor? That is carried unanimously. We're on to item 15, Fire Rescue Services, projects listed in Appendix D. And so we've we've already have the staffing request listed as non-routine on this one, so it's not a change for us. So unless there's anything else you'd like to change, council, we can consider this motion as is without amending it. But did you want to identify the staffing request numbers just so that council can denote it if they'd like to for item 250?
Can do that. That's related to, just bear with me, a B number, Fire Master Plan, which is B S2. Thank you. S2. Appreciate that.
Yep. Great, thanks. Any questions on this group of projects, council? Seeing none, is there a mover? Moved by Councillor Rowe, seconded by Councillor Hanmer. All those in favor? And that's carried unanimously. Mayor, I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand. Were you good with that? Okay. So we are on to municipal enforcement. Item 16. It's a singular item there. Is there any changes to that, council? Seeing none, may I have a mover? Moved by Councillor Hanmer, seconded by Councillor Vasek. All in favor? That is carried unanimously. Item 17, Parks, Forestry, and Cemetery. All right, there's quite a number of projects there. Item 302, I recognize it's already non-routine, but did you again want to just identify the staff associated with that, please?
That's related to the water technician position, and I apologize, just flipping here. Go ahead. I3, sorry.
I3?
Too many pages with
No, it's
these.
no
Yeah.
problem. We understand that. It's like it's like an exam when you've got your reading materials with you. So I'm just pointing this out to council. So there's, within this though, there's two other that were moved from routine to non-routine then. So 308 and 309. Did you want to identify what staff number that those ones went with, Mr. Dykstra?
Yes, to council 308, 309, B27, the manager of parks. Okay, and then there's furthermore item 327, which is winter sidewalk equipment. That's related to QP seasonals and conversion to full-time S3 and S4.
So the question was asked of me on this one, if winter control on the sidewalks is not required, how is this staff redeployed within the team? That was at your thing, sorry.
So I'll lead off, and then if Robin wants to move in here. So these are seasonal positions, and if we're chatting about the operating now piece to that, these are then seasonal positions, and then conversion of also seasonals to full-time. So if the items S3, S4 do not advance those positions, that'll be the conversation for next week on that front. And then if the equipment is not needed, I know there's consideration of some equipment. There is some need for that as well, which part of the discussion could help support a change in the zone model that Parks has been looking at to support that. I believe right now they have 11 units or 10 units. An additional 2 units would greatly help with the current deployment if council so choose not to advance the S3, 4, and 5 items.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. So for this one, council, this would be an as amended motion. Is there any other changes? Sorry, Councillor Vasek, did you have other changes? Question? Yeah, go ahead. Yep.
Thanks. It's through you, Chair. It's related to item 286, the Cemetery Parkview Master Plan update. It's not that much money, so maybe sometimes I feel silly asking questions when it's not that much money, but it's an area of interest, I would say, community-wise, and there's 3 other strategies that are related to it: the Outdoor Sports Field Strategy, the Cemetery Parkview Master Plan, and the Bechtel Park Plan. So I'm just curious, in light of about to be approving this likely as a routine project, curious about the timing for these and how they're all going to be aligned.
Yeah, great question. Spoke around being future ready with our planning initiatives through community services, and 2024 really building on our trends and needs study to start to understand what are the community trends and needs, then building on, okay, then what's the impact on our outdoor fields? How does the current work then on our indoor related to space planning that we're doing related to recreation? So that's the next piece. Then with the broader strategies around Waterloo Park, that's the next piece in 2025. So 24's trends, these more detailed studies, we just build on to them for 2025 and really start to have the conversation because they're intertwined. And what are some of the outcomes? Those are the key pieces there. So that starts the conversation. Bechtel Park will be part of that, and Parkview too, as well as we see where we're going with the demand there. And I'm going to see if Robin has anything additional to add on Parkview or Bechtel. Okay, so he's noting that I've got a good overview here provided to yourself.
Yeah, that's great. It's just good to know that they're all aligned and you're thinking about how they're all aligned. And of course you are, but just good to know. And while we're over at Bechtel, it's not on this list here, but it's an over target list, over target 10, the Bechtel fixed flooding issue. And so when I saw the flooding issue, I was initially concerned because it's flooding and it's on the over target list. So I wanted to know if there are ways that you're addressing that flooding in the interim, and what are the risks of that being on the over target list?
Yeah, I'm going to have Director Van Oudegem just speak to that. That's on the facility side. Kevin?
Through you, Chair Freeman and Councillor Vasic. Yeah, so that one is on the over target list, and that would represent sort of a full rehabilitation of that issue, but essentially there's water coming down a grade that's not appropriate, and it's sort of getting into an overhead door. But staff have plans within the existing facilities capital budget to do basically install some trench drains to mitigate that issue. So I think we can manage that issue within our FDMS budget for the time being.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. That's it for me.
Councillor Wright? Thank you. Through you, Chair. Just a couple of questions regarding reference numbers 331, 301, and 337, which are all associated with sports fields and sports activities. In each of these project sheets, there is a reference to artificial turf, and they are sizable budget amounts, especially the Rim Park one. And I'm just wondering, is this managed in part by the asset management system? And the reason I'm asking is because globally there are trends towards finding sustainable measures for artificial turf. There's some forever chemicals involved, and as well as the impact of the tire crumb in the whole life cycle of the product and its waste recycling. And so what I'm trying to figure out is whether in our approach to this, whether we're locking ourselves into something, or is there a modern equivalent as we use with our asset management system?
I'm going to ask the director team. This has been a point of conversation with Jillian and Kevin and Robin to be ready here. So we've, in terms of assets, a part of asset management work that division does, and how we're rehabbing them and how we're looking to support them in the future in terms of latest technology, then going to the subject matter experts in the divisions to see what is the best product. And I know that they've been, same questions you asked, they've been asking those, and what are the alternatives, what is the better product out there? How do we make sure it's the best, the safest, all those things? So yeah, that team is looking at that in detail. So yeah, both on the broader corporate asset piece, but also within the subject matter expert having that technical lens and their knowledge of that use of that product. They're examining that.
Okay, thanks for that. I think it's just important to flag that because I'm sure all of council will appreciate having updates on that as we go forward. It's kind of, I guess overall, you're sort of damned if you do, damned if you don't in terms of sustainability with artificial turf. So there are pros and cons for sure. And I think we're all going to want to be closely aligned to that education that staff is going through as well. Thanks.
Yep, we look forward to that opportunity. Thank you.
Councillor Bodley.
Thank you, through you, Chair Freeman. I have a question about 294. 294 is park shade structures. And I think the first instance of this capital budget line item being shown to us was in 2022. And so I'm curious if you can highlight for us whether this has actually been implemented in any parks, and if you could share sort of the process by which we are determining which parks are going to get shade structures allocated towards them.
Robin's going to come up and share the response.
Through the chair to you, Councillor Bodley. This particular line really is identified when we go through park engagement. And so when we do a project, say for example, as we enter the East Side Dog Park public engagement process, we anticipate that this will be an item that will come forward through the engagement process. And so the capital budget itself will carry for the construction and development of the dog park. And as the public triggers the need for shade, we'll pull from this fund to implement shade structures throughout our capital projects. So we're anticipating at the dog park and we're planning for that. But when we look at St. Moritz or Lexington or even the Waterloo Park strategic plan, we'll be looking through public engagement, the need for shade will be triggered. I think too, just the work that Sandy's group is doing to be climate ready, there's a lot of need for shade and benches. And so those, as the need comes up through engagement, we'll use this fund to implement shade structures. That's awesome, thank you. And my next question is about St. Moritz Park, so maybe you might want to stick around. The first question is maybe more of a finance question, and I wanted to highlight, I guess, that the project references that this is something that is to be included in a future DC update. And I wanted to ask if Bill 23 regulations continue to delay our DC update, is there any potential that jeopardizes the implementation of this park?
Through Chair Freeman to Councillor Bodley. So no, the reason staff had flagged this is it would need to be added to a future bylaws. It's not in the current bylaw, but that doesn't preclude staff or council from when this is brought forward to direct staff that it is added to a future DC bylaw to allow it to be funded in part through development charges. And I'll just note that this project is a very small amount of funding from DCs. So in base dollars, 142,000 of the 1.7, so inflated to 1.9 million. So that's the context of the DC funding. But then there is the Bill 23 challenges that you alluded to for all DC funded projects in terms of full collection. But maybe I'll leave it at that, is that we would be able to add this with council direction added to a future bylaw update.
Yep, that's great. Thank you, Brad. And then just lastly, through you, Chair Freeman, is this particular project has a lot of really high public interest. I note that it's non-routine. I'm just curious if you can maybe share with me what public engagement for what this new community hub park might look like, particularly as it's highlighted in 2024 and 2025, so in the very near future.
Sure, through the chair to Councillor Bodley. I believe the engagement will be similar to past engagement that the city has done. So obviously Engage Waterloo. I believe that we would have some form of open house, may have an online survey. We'll be really looking for the public to drive, what direction, what path we take in terms of the infrastructure that goes into this park. So it'll be a full engagement process. We'll be working with the Ready team, with the communications department, and yeah, reaching out to as many residents as we can.
Perfect. And I would just lastly just highlight that I know that the neighborhood association in particular is very interested in this, so if we could make sure that we include the neighborhood association.
Yeah.
And because this is supposed to be a hub park on the west end, also perhaps reaching out to some of the other neighborhood associations around it as well to get their feedback would be really valuable. Thank you.
Any other questions, council? Seeing none, we have a motion as amended. Is there someone willing to move that? Moved by Councillor Rowe, seconded by Councillor Hanmer. All those in favor? That is carried unanimously. So the next item, council, is with regard to recreation services. Is there any changes between routine and non-routine that people would like to make? Seeing none, do I have a mover? Moved by Councillor Hanmer, seconded by Councillor Vasek. All those in favor? That's carried unanimously. So we're on to Mr. Ormson.
Good afternoon, Chair Freeman, Mayor McCabe, members of council. The overview for the Integrated Planning and Public Works 2024 to 2026 staff tabled budget looks as follows. So over the next 10 years, the capital investment plan for the entire department is $617 million spread across each of the 5 divisions. Obviously with the biggest asset class, transportation services, having one of the larger balances, as you can see there. And for the next 3 years, the total spend is $225 million. 52% of the capital investment within integrated planning and public works over the 10-year horizon is related to rehabilitation. The remaining is related to growth and a mix of rehabilitation and other, including legislated and strategic. And as council knows, there's literally dozens of laws and pieces of legislation and regulations that govern the work of the department, ranging from environmental protection to health and safety, water, wastewater compliance, and minimum maintenance standards for roads, not to mention review timelines for planning approvals and building permits. By theme, if we were to look at environmental sustainability and climate action, those are projects related to active transportation, things like bike parking, LED streetlights, snow removal, trail counters. In the complete community category, we'd have things like the city's official plan, affordable housing strategy, uptown public realm work, projects like the Civic Commons. Under infrastructure and planning systems, where the largest amount of the spend is, we'd be looking at things like road reconstruction, sewer and water main rehabilitation, pedestrian bridges, retaining walls. And for innovation and future ready, we are looking at things like digital solutions for e-permitting and mobile inspections and building standards, various growth studies, pavement data management, and information management related to engineering indexes and indices. The 10-year capital horizon is looking very similar. As you can see, it's basically a mirror image of what we see in the 3-year. Highlight one project today because it represents over a third of the 3-year capital budget, and that's the Beaver Creek Road Conservation Drive project. The estimated project value is about $77.6 million, largely funded from DC debt. It's obviously a non-routine project, so it will return to council for a detailed funding release before the project is actually tendered. It would support up to 2,300 residential units, improve the transportation network, involve the installation of water main, and support active transportation trails and recreational opportunities around Laurel Creek Conservation Area. Developer group that is involved and own the lands in that area have expressed a willingness in principle to some cost sharing. The cost-sharing details would obviously return to council because they'd be subject to a legal agreement before the project could be tendered. And a funding opportunity now exists through the province of Ontario in the Housing Enabling and Water Systems Fund, which hopefully could provide up to $35 million in grant contributions. So for council's consideration today, we have a total of $88 million in routine projects. There's about 101 individual routine projects and 136 million in non-routine. And I believe there's 18 individual projects in the non-routine category. So with that, I'd be happy to take questions from council. And before doing that, I would like to acknowledge all of the IPPW managers that are here today that really did all the heavy lifting in terms of generating the project sheets that we work with our friends in finance on. And as Mr. Anderson noted, developing a capital project's not an easy thing. You have to look at history, you have to look at forward-thinking things, you have to look at the scope and the nature of what's trying to be done, because obviously the dollars are precious, but also if you get it wrong on a capital project, the cost ramifications can be quite significant. So the team does put a lot of effort into scoping the projects to make sure we try to get them as sharp as we can in terms of the value. So thank you, Chair Freeman. I'd be happy to entertain any questions.
Thank you. Appreciate that. I think probably the easiest thing is go as we did, each number, and then ask any questions that we have on those project sheets as we get to them. So council, the first one is relates to building standards. And so I gather item 501 is similar to what you explained to us earlier, that it's building standards, but fleet and procurement are the primary deliverers of that piece. So did anyone want to move any of these from routine to non-routine? Seeing none, do I have a mover for item 19, moved by Councillor Rowe, seconded by Councillor Vasek? All those in favor? That's carried unanimously. City utilities and sanitary projects are listed, and I'd like to know if anyone would like to move any of these from routine to non-routine. I had a question with regard to 521. I would have thought that that would have made, like, that the value of that would have made it non-routine just because of the value. Is it because it's an enterprise service that we don't do that?
Through you, Chair Freeman, to you, Chair Freeman. So under the 3-year budget, the threshold for non-routine is $5 million. So it's not exceeding that over the 3-year period.
Thank you. All right, any changes? Seeing none, is there a mover? Moved by Councillor Bodley, seconded by Councillor Hanmer. All those in favor? That is carried unanimously. City utilities stormwater projects. So these are here for your consideration. Any changes? Seeing none. Mover, moved by Councillor Rowe, seconded by Councillor Wright. All those in favor? That's carried unanimously. City utilities water. Any changes? Seeing none. Mover. Moved by Councillor Rowe, seconded by Councillor Vasek. All those in favor? It's carried unanimously. Item 23. It's related to engineering services projects. Anyone? Yep, Councillor Wright.
I just have a question about item 570, which is the Civic Commons. So it's a couple of years before we really get into this project. There's obviously some initial funds in 2024 and 2025. Just wondering what the interim opportunities are for pop-up activities or other kinds of use of
that park, or whether that will be precluded by some of the pre-planning stuff?
Through you, Chair Freeman, to Councillor Wright. That's a really good question, Councillor Wright. I don't think the team has thought in depth about any interim use. That's certainly not to say there couldn't be some. I know the region of Waterloo is actively undertaking rehabilitation of the water infrastructure there, so it would have to be coordinated with any construction activity on site, but we can certainly take that one away to see if there would be some sort of use that could be made of the site in the meantime.
Did you have a follow-up? Okay, Councillor Bodley?
Thank you, through your Chair Freeman. Not a question, just a comment here, noting that 590 is in here. I wanted to echo some of Commissioner Ormson's comments there about the necessity of us advancing with this significant infrastructure investment in the northwest corner of the city. Not just for the housing needs that were alluded to by Commissioner Ormson, but for the transportation network in that area, including the active transportation network to facilitate that trail around the Laurel Creek Conservation area. I want anyone who's listening to know that we are serious about our housing goals, and this is a piece of the puzzle when it comes to the City of Waterloo trying to achieve our housing targets. And yet, at the same time, I will note that it is non-routine, which means that it is going to come back to council for us to consider how we are actually going to pay for this in light of potential concerns related to Bill 23. And I'm going to use this opportunity to plead with the province to release their Bill 23 regulations so that we have some greater certainty around how we are actually going to fund these major infrastructure projects that are facilitating the build out of more housing in our community. And I'm also just really encouraged to hear that staff are thinking of creative ways for us to make this project work, whether that's through grant opportunities or looking at opportunities to partner with the development community on this. So I want to thank staff for helping alleviate or mitigate some of the risk that is associated here, and again, just plead with the province to provide us with the regulations that we need so that we have some foresight into how we're going to fund these major projects going forward. Thank you.
Okay, with that, Council, was there any other changes to this list that we wanted to make? Okay, seeing none, do I have a mover? Moved by Councillor Bodley, seconded by Councillor Wright. All those in favor? That's carried unanimously. Item 24, planning projects. So can you please move those to non-routine? Item 620 to non-routine, item 623 to non-routine, and then if you could remind us, Mr. Ormson, on the staff positions those are tied to, please?
Yeah, certainly, Councillor Freeman. Reference the affordable housing strategy. That is item B31, and that's a senior policy planner for affordable housing work, take care of the city's strategy in terms of grants and inclusionary zoning and all the efforts we want to make on affordable housing. So that's one full-time planner position. I don't believe, and Mr. Dykstra could maybe layer in, I don't believe on 623 we have any specific staff positions that I'm aware of that are tied to that one.
Okay, it's just, you've just identified it because it's an item of interest to council, being the Northdale Parks work associated with you. So if I understand that correctly, you would like to make that non-routine? Okay, so that's good. Thanks, sorry, put you in the hot seat there, Mr. Ormson. Was there any other items that we'd like to move from routine to non-routine within this listing? Seeing none, any questions within this listing? Okay, so may I have a mover for an amended motion with the amendments as listed? Councillor Rowe, seconded by Councillor Vasek. All those in favor? That's carried unanimously. All right, we're on to item number 25, transportation services. And So I'd just like to know if there's any listed here, council, that you'd like to move from routine to non-routine or vice versa. Can you go down to the traffic calming one there again? I forget which number that is. Sorry? Right. And that, I just want to double check, that's just to do studies, is it? Like if we have a request, is it to do studies or is it actually to do work?
Yeah, thanks for your question on that one too, Councillor Freeman. That one, my understanding, is tied to a bundle of things, one of which is the speed management on residential streets. And I think Jenny or Bob could confirm that, but I think there are some TMP-related items in there as well, but I do know a substantial component of that line is to deal with the phase-in of the 30K.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's good, thank you, I appreciate that. Councillor Vasek?
Just a couple of questions too. I don't want to move anything to non-routine. For reference, 650 active transportation crossing of Highway 85, it's the bane of maybe all of our existences for many years. But there's some money finally allocated in 2027, so good to see the city investing. It's $270,000. So I was just curious what our contribution is being used towards. There's the feasibility design construction. Yeah, so just curious what we are contributing towards at that time.
Through you, Councillor Vasek, through you, Chair Freeman, Councillor Vasek, I believe that is for the analysis at two locations. So Albert and Conestoga Road was one of the visionary locations for that. And the other one would be through Bechtel Park. So that money is certainly going to be tied up for studies. There wouldn't be really any construction dollars given the value of those types of projects. They're multi-million dollar items when we're crossing the expressway. But I do know that in the project sheet, those two locations I mentioned are what that money is marked for, yeah.
Okay, perfect. And then I wanted to use this as an opportunity, reference 658, the trail lighting retrofit program. There's been lots of interest for a long time to get lighting on the Moses Springer Trail right in, like through the park and in front of the community center. So I'm looking for a status update on lighting through Moses Springer and if this might be funds used for it.
Yeah, through Councillor Freeman to you, Councillor Vasek again. Yeah, that is ranked number one. So I'm happy to tell you that project, amongst all the other projects that Chris Hodgins and team are looking at there, that one is first up on the list. So thanks for your patience on that one.
That's great. That's top 5 highlight of all of the last 5 years. Thank you, Ron. That's it for me.
Any other questions? Councillor Bodley?
Excuse me, thank you, through you, Chair Freeman. My question is on 670. And I'd maybe like staff to first to provide some comment on whether or not this might be contemplated as routine versus non-routine. It's really close to that $5 million threshold that would make it automatically non-routine. And I know that this is not like an overarching full road reconstruction, but this particular stretch of street has been of high public interest with respect to the active transportation facilities or lack thereof currently on the street. I'd maybe like staff to just speak to whether or not there would be any risks if we were to move this to non-routine and ask some questions about what is envisioned within this project in the coming years.
Through Councillor Freeman to you, Councillor Bodley, thanks for your question on that one. I might get Francis to weigh in, but my understanding is that's largely related to the regional water main rehabilitation that will be happening on Columbia Street. I think there will be some opportunities when the region do the road restoration for the water main to look at and enhancing the existing bollards and line paint. The problem with Columbia Street in that stretch is very narrow, and we're accommodating GRT and 4 lanes of traffic. So I don't know if Francis would be able to offer anything else to help us on that one.
Through you, Chair, to Councillor Bodley. Just wanted to add that a portion of the funding for the project is for the separated cycling. That's going to be part of the scope along the corridor.
And so do we, Do we have some insight into, I mean, when we say separated cycling infrastructure, that could mean a lot of different things. And I mean, maybe that's why I'm asking whether or not this might be better to come back as non-routine so that we can see what those separated cycling infrastructure might look like, and whether that's something that necessitates broader public engagement rather than being a routine item.
Through you, Chair to Council Bob, that's something we can take back for sure.
So given that, I'm going to request that we move this to non-routine if possible.
No problem. Make it non-routine. So that would mean that we would have an amended motion to consider, considering that we only moved one project from routine to non-routine, except for a few staff things. I think we're doing pretty decent. So was there any other changes council would like to make in this bucket of goods? All right, seeing none, would you like to move that motion, that amended motion? Councillor Bodley, yep, seconded. Councillor Hanmer, all those in favor? And that's moved unanimously. Did you have any changes? Oh, it's not unanimous, so you're contrary-minded to this one? Okay, thank you. Thanks. Did you, sorry, I apologize, Councillor Roach, did you want to speak to that one? Okay, okay. I just was worried that maybe I missed your hand. Okay, so I think we are now adjourned until 6:30, which is amazing. Thank you so much. I know, we finished early.